The papers lay spread across the coffee table like evidence at a crime scene. My father's hands trembled slightly as he held the deed. The actual deed to our family home. The house I grew up in. The house I thought would be mine one day. My brother sat across from me, perfectly composed, and smiled. Not an anxious smile. Not an embarrassed smile. A controlled, victorious smile that said he'd already won and was simply waiting for me to catch up. "The property transfer is finalized," my father said quietly. His voice didn't match his words. It sounded like he was confessing, not announcing. "We've put the house in Scott's name. For tax purposes. For convenience." I looked at my mother. She couldn't meet my eyes. I looked at my brother again. His smile didn't waver. And in that split second, something inside me froze solid. Because I realized something worse than the betrayal itself. They had all known. Everyone in this room. My parents, my brother, probably his wife, had been planning this without me. The dates on the documents showed months of coordination. I wasn't learning news. I was watching a performance of news I'd already missed. My brother's smile widened just slightly, as if he could read my thoughts. As if he was enjoying the exact moment I understood what had happened. I stood up, said nothing, walked to my car. And that's when the real war began. By the next morning I needed answers. Called my mother. "When was this decided?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. Silence. The kind of silence that screams guilt. "It made sense," she finally said. Her words came out rushed, rehearsed. "For the estate. For taxes. You know how complicated these things." "When?" I repeated. 3 months ago. 3 months. I'd been there for dinner. For holidays. For a random Sunday when my brother and his wife came over. And I remembered my mother and my brother disappearing into the kitchen for a long time. I'd thought nothing of it. I had thought nothing of it. Why wasn't I told? Yes. "We didn't want conflict," my mother said. That was the lie. That was the actual, insulting lie. As if I couldn't handle being consulted on something that affected my future, my inheritance, my place in this family. I pulled up the documents on my computer, reviewed the dates carefully, the signatures, the witness names, everything official, everything finalized. This wasn't a recent decision. This was a calculated, documented plan that had been executed while I was completely unaware. They'd had a family agreement without the family's knowledge. My phone buzzed. A text from my brother. "Don't complicate this." Not "sorry." Not "let's talk." Not even an explanation. A threat dressed up as advice. That text told me everything. It told me he knew exactly what he'd done. It told me he was prepared for my reaction. Told me there was no accident here, just premeditation. I saved the message. I didn't yell. I didn't argue. I simply hung up the phone with my mother and went about my day like nothing had shattered. This confused people. Later, I'd realize that's exactly why it worked. Everyone expected me to rage. To storm back to the house to demand answers, to throw accusations at family dinners. I played that role before, the emotional one, the reactive one, the easy one to dismiss. So I didn't do that. Instead, I sat quietly in my apartment and let shock transform into something sharper. Focus. I opened an old folder on my laptop. The one filled with every promise anyone in my family had ever made to me. And yes, I had saved them, emails, text messages, voice memo transcriptions, screenshots of conversations. I'd always been the organized one. The one who documented things because I couldn't afford to be gaslit. There it was. An email from my father dated 7 years ago. "This house will be yours when we're gone. You've earned it by being the responsible one." A text from my mother 4 years ago. "We promised you this, and we meant it." Even a voice memo from my brother, younger, drunker, more honest, saying, "I never wanted the house anyway. You should have it." Every single promise recorded. Save. Timestamp. I wasn't emotional as I read through them. I was methodical, analytical. I was the girl who worked in data analysis, who understood patterns, who could see the architecture of lies from 1,000 miles away. My brother had made one critical mistake. He'd assumed I'd react like I always had. Emotional, loud, forgettable. He hadn't counted on me becoming someone else entirely. Within days, the family narrative shifted, and I watched it happen like I was observing a science experiment. First, the group chat. My parents created a new family thread, without me in it at first. My aunt sent a screenshot. They were calling me unstable, describing me as dramatic, framing the situation as me being ungrateful about a decision that was made for the good of everyone. My brother was a master at this, controlling the story, at making himself the reasonable one. He told my father one version. Tiffany's just upset because she doesn't understand finances. He told my mother another. She's always been selfish. She just cares about money. He told my aunt something different. I feel terrible, but Mom and Dad needed this for security. Everyone heard a different story. Everyone felt sorry for him because he seemed conflicted, reasonable, concerned. Cousin called me directly. Are you okay? She asked carefully. Your brother's really worried about you. My brother, worried about me. He was weaponizing concern, making my silence look like instability, making the people who cared about me doubt me. This was psychological warfare dressed up as family care, and I could see exactly how he was doing it. I'd watched him manipulate situations my entire life. The difference now was that I was paying attention. I didn't confront him immediately. Instead, I went through messages methodically. My brother told my aunt. Dad made the decision to put the house in my name because he was worried about medical bills. But I had the email from my father to my brother, dated a week before the transfer. I want to discuss making the house yours, but only if Tiffany agrees. Lie. A documented, provable lie. He told my mother. Tiffany said she didn't want the house anyway. But I had the text thread between us from 2 months before the transfer, where he'd asked me directly, You still want the house, right? And I'd answered, Of course. Another lie. Another documented contradiction. Then he told my father, Tiffany's been saying she wants to move out of state. So what's the point of her having the house? I'd never said that. Not once. But I saved the message where my brother said it, and I kept it. What fascinated me, what genuinely interested me, was how quickly lies fracture when you have time. They don't hold up. They crumble under the weight of dates and timestamps and receipts. My brother had made an assumption. He'd assumed that in the chaos of emotion, no one would bother checking facts. He'd assumed I'd be too hurt to think clearly. He didn't know that hurt and clarity aren't always opposites. Sometimes they're twins. A week later, my parents invited me to dinner. Peace offering maybe. Or a performance. I went. I was perfectly pleasant. I asked about their day. I complimented the food. I laughed at jokes. I was so normal, so calm, so utterly unbothered that my brother began to relax. He thought he'd won. At the table he started correcting my memories. Small things but deliberate. You don't remember that, he'd say when I mentioned something. You weren't there. That's not what happened, he'd correct when I brought up a family story. I just smiled and didn't argue. Let him be the expert on my own life. Let him rewrite history in front of witnesses. My mother watched this carefully. I could see the discomfort flicker across her face. He grew bolder with each unchallenged statement. Started making bigger corrections. Started speaking for me in conversations. Tiffany always felt this way. When I'd felt the opposite, he was testing me, seeing how far he could push. He thought my silence meant surrender. He didn't understand that I was something far more dangerous than angry. I was patient. Back in my apartment I did something methodical. I created a spreadsheet. Dates down one column. Conversations across the top. Names of witnesses on the right. Every family decision that had been made in the last year, I traced back to its origin. And every single one traced back to my brother initiating it privately, then presenting it to my parents as something already decided. The vacation they took in the spring. He'd picked the location and told my parents it was a surprise he'd planned. The decision to refinance the house. He'd researched options and guided my father through the process. Even small things like changing the insurance provider or updating the will. He'd been the one to suggest it, research it, prepare it. He'd slowly positioned himself as the financial decision-maker of the family. And my parents, who were growing older and more tired, had let him. But here's what I realized. They'd let him because they trusted him. Because they thought he was helping. The first person he'd manipulated wasn't my parents. It was me. Years ago, when I was younger, my brother had convinced me that business and finance were his thing, not mine. Had suggested I focus on my career instead of family money matters. Had made me feel like I'd be bored by it all. So I'd stepped back. And he'd stepped in. I'd made it easy for him. The question now wasn't how he'd betrayed me. The question was, would I stay stepped back or would I step forward again? 2 weeks later, at another dinner, my father said something that changed everything. The lawyer asked about your thoughts on the deed transfer, he said casually to my brother. Then he turned to me. I'm not sure why your name wasn't on the paperwork. That seems like an oversight. My brother's entire body went rigid. It wasn't an oversight, he said quickly. We discussed this. Did we? My father asked. And I watched something flicker behind his eyes. The first real doubt I'd seen. My mother set down her fork, slowly, like she was building courage. I'm not sure we did discuss it, she said quietly. I mean, not all of us. My brother's jaw tightened. He shot my father a look. A warning look. The kind of look a kid gives a parent when they're about to say something embarrassing. Except my father was supposed to be the authority figure here. And my brother was treating him like he needed to be controlled. I watched my mother see this. I watched her register what this look meant. In that moment, a small crack appeared in my brother's carefully constructed reality. Not a big one, but big enough. He started talking, explaining, over-explaining, using words like responsibility and experience, and it's what's best for everyone. But he was talking too much. And everyone at that table could feel it. I waited until the right moment. When everyone was relaxed. When my brother was mid-story about something at his office. I asked very gently. Can you explain how you told Aunt Karen that Dad made the decision, but Dad told me that you and Mom proposed it? The table went completely still. I didn't. My brother started. And I have the text messages, I said pleasantly. I was just curious which version was accurate. My brother's face flushed. Just slightly. But everyone saw it. That's not a fair question, he said. His voice had changed. Sharper now. Isn't it? I replied. I'm genuinely confused. I'd like clarification. He snapped. Not dramatically. Not loudly. Just a slight edge creeping into his voice. A defensive tone that made it clear the question had gotten under his skin. You're twisting things, he said. You always do this. You create drama where there isn't any. And there it was. The accusation. The way he turned my calm, factual question into something ugly and emotional. Everyone at the table noticed. My mother's expression hardened. My father leaned back in his chair. My aunt, who was visiting, exchanged a glance with my uncle. It asked one question. One calm, simple question with evidence behind it. And he'd reacted like I'd accused him of murder. That reaction was worth more than 1,000 arguments would have been. The next day my aunt called. I need to talk to you about something, she said. I've been thinking about what your brother said, and I'm confused. About what? I asked. He told me the house transfer was your idea. That you wanted your parents to simplify their finances, and he was just helping you make it happen. I was quiet. That's not true, is it? She continued. No, I said simply. It's not. I thought so. 'Cause I remember, 3 years ago you told me you wanted to live in that house one day. You were very clear about it. I am. And he lied about that. Yes. There was a pause. Long one. Then, I have messages from him. From months ago. Saying different things than what he's telling people now. Should I be worried? About what? About him. About what he's doing to your parents. I realized then that I wasn't alone anymore. My aunt had been gathering her own evidence. Saving her own messages. Noticing the inconsistencies. Keep those messages, I told her quietly. And call me if he tries to gaslight you about what he said. She did. Over the next week she called 3 times. Each time with a new contradiction she'd caught. Each time more confused, more concerned. I was no longer fighting this battle by myself. The witnesses were waking up. At the next family gathering I did something different. I stopped defending myself entirely. When my brother said I'd always been dramatic about family finances, I just smiled and said nothing. When he claimed the house transfer was for my own good, I nodded like I was considering his perspective. When he explained his version of events to my cousins, I let him go. Didn't interrupt. Didn't correct. Just let him keep talking. And the longer he talked, the more he said. The more he explained, the less his explanations made sense. It's not about control, he insisted. I'm just trying to simplify things for Mom and Dad. But then why, someone asked, did he need sole decision-making authority on the deed? Because decisions need to be made quickly, he said. And Tiffany is always thoughtful. It takes her time. Translation: I was slow. I was an obstacle. But don't you consult with Tiffany on big decisions? My cousin pressed. Of course, he said. Too quickly. But this was urgent. It hadn't been urgent. The timeline proved it. The decision had been in the works for months, with no actual deadline. Every explanation he gave just deepened the hole he was standing in. I said almost nothing. And my silence was louder than any accusation could have been. My brother made his mistake in week 4. He came to my parents with a new proposal. He wanted to take control of their investment portfolio as well. For convenience, he said. So there's one person managing everything. I watched my mother's face. Watched her hesitate. That hesitation was everything. We'll think about it, my father said carefully. But my brother didn't accept that. He pushed. Explained why it made sense. Outlined the benefits. Presented it like it was already decided. Just waiting for rubber stamp approval. And my mother, who had been quiet for weeks, watching her son become someone she didn't quite recognize, said something. Scott, no. Not let's think about it. Not maybe later. No. My brother's confidence visibly cracked. But Mom, I said no. We can manage our own investments. And just like that, the illusion that he was the reasonable one, the competent one, the one who had everything under control, it shattered. Because if he was truly trying to help, why would he push after they'd said no? Why would he keep trying to persuade them? A person who's actually concerned about their parents' welfare accepts their parents' boundaries. My brother couldn't accept a boundary. Because the boundary threatened his control. 3 days later there was a family gathering. Cousins, aunts, uncles. The whole extended family. I was waiting for the right moment. It came when my brother was telling someone about how he'd convinced my parents to put the house in his name. It made sense, he was saying. They needed. I interrupted very casually. Actually, didn't you say once that I was supposed to get it? I feel like I have something about that somewhere. A promise. My brother went very still. I don't remember saying that, he said carefully. I could find it, I offered. I save important things. Like promises. Silence. The kind of silence where everyone in the room understands something has just shifted. It was probably just casual talk, he said. People say things. In writing. Yes. Did people say important things in writing? And I pulled out my phone. Not to show it to him. Just to hold it. So everyone in the room knew I had evidence. He denied it too fast. That was the tell. A person telling the truth doesn't deny things fast. Person telling the truth takes a breath. considers, remembers accurately. My brother denied like he was throwing a punch. And everyone saw it. After that, everything changed subtly. Family members started asking him questions. Not accusing, just clarifying. So when did you and Mom and Dad decide? My uncle asked innocently. What made you think it was urgent? My aunt pressed. Did Tiffany really say she didn't want it? Another cousin wondered. And now my brother was the one answering. Now he was the one explaining himself. The authority had flipped without anyone explicitly saying it had flipped. He'd stopped being the helpful son and become the son who needed to justify himself. I watched him realize this. Watched him understand that the narrative he'd so carefully constructed was now being questioned from every angle. His confidence cracked. His answers became circular. He repeated himself. I was just trying to help, he said. I've always tried to help. Have you? My father asked. And there was something in that question that went far deeper than the house. Had he been helping? Or had he been repositioning himself? Had he been trying to support his parents? Or had he been gradually consolidating power? My brother looked at me across the room. And in that moment, I saw something in his eyes that I'd never seen before. Understanding. He finally understood what I'd been doing. Not fighting him. Not arguing with him. Just quietly, calmly, systematically showing people the truth. He'd underestimated me completely. The next day my brother sent me a message. You need to stop this. You're poisoning the family against me, and it needs to stop now. I'm being serious. There it was. The threat. The desperation. The mask fully slipped. I saved the message immediately. And here's the beautiful part. It contradicted every public story he'd been telling. He'd been saying he was just trying to help, that everything was reasonable and calm. But privately he was threatening me. One message. That was all I needed. Because a person who's acting in good faith doesn't threaten. They don't demand. They explain. They clarify. They address concerns directly. My brother was doing none of those things. He was trying to intimidate me into silence. That message proved everything. I didn't post the message online. I didn't broadcast it. I didn't hold a family meeting and demand justice. Instead, I did something far more powerful. I showed it to two people, my mother and my aunt. Just showed it. Didn't say anything. Let them read it themselves. My mother's face went pale. He said this to you. Yesterday, I said calmly. My aunt looked at me. Then at the message. Then back at me. He's trying to scare you. I know. Into staying quiet. I know. No accusations. No drama. Just the truth presented as evidence. And word spread. Quietly. Privately. Family members called each other. Did you know he threatened her? They asked each other. Not Tiffany says he threatened her. But he threatened her. Like it was fact. 'Cause it was fact. One message had accomplished what 1,000 arguments couldn't have. It made my brother look like exactly what he was. Someone willing to threaten his own sister to protect his position. My parents called another meeting. This time it was official. Everyone was invited. The tension in the room was suffocating. My father started speaking. About trust. About family. About decisions that should have been made together. My brother defended himself immediately. Talked over everyone. Explained his reasoning. Brought up what he'd contributed to the family. I brought nothing to this meeting except my timeline. Just dates. Just facts. Just a clear record of what he'd said versus what he'd told different people. I presented it calmly. Without emotion. My brother interrupted me repeatedly. That's not fair, he kept saying. You're taking things out of context. But context doesn't matter when you have dates and direct quotes. He was still trying to argue, to convince, to manipulate. I was just presenting facts. During the meeting, my brother made another critical mistake. He started correcting people. When my aunt said she remembered him telling her something different, he dismissed her. You don't remember that correctly. When my mother tried to speak, He talked over her. Let me explain what actually happened. When my father questioned his timeline, he became condescending. You weren't paying close attention when I told you this. That's not my fault. He was so confident, so sure that he could logic his way out of this, so sure that he could convince everyone that they were misremembering, misunderstanding, being unfair. And I watched my mother flinch. Every time he dismissed her, every time he corrected her own memories, she flinched, because she was finally seeing it. The thing I'd always known, that my brother didn't respect her, didn't see her as an equal, saw her as someone to manage and control. My uncle asked the question that broke it. If everything was fair and transparent, why did you need sole control of the deed? Why not just be on it together? My brother had no clean answer for that. He tried. Talked about efficiency, about avoiding conflict, about how I wouldn't have wanted the responsibility anyway. But none of it made sense. Because if I wouldn't have wanted the responsibility, he should have asked me first. And he hadn't. He decided I wouldn't want it, and then proceeded accordingly. That's not helping someone. That's making decisions for them. The room went very quiet. Someone else asked, "Were you planning to ask Tiffany eventually?" My brother's silence was answer enough. He was going to keep the house in his name, forever if he could. And maybe eventually, far down the line, he'd tell me it was too late to change it. That's what the silence meant. I spoke once during that entire meeting. I said, "I'm not angry about the decision. I'm hurt that I wasn't included in making it. And I'm concerned about a pattern where my brother makes decisions for everyone, then presents them as something that was already decided. That's not partnership. That's control." Low. Factual. No accusation. No emotion. Just observation. My brother exploded. "I've given this family everything," he said. "I've worked my ass off to manage the finances, handle the problems, make the hard decisions. And this is the thanks I get. Being accused of controlling people." He was yelling now. His face was red. "I've sacrificed so much," he continued. "And Tiffany just sits back and judges me for trying to help." And everyone in that room saw it. Saw what he really believed. That his sacrifice entitled him to control. That his effort meant he got to make decisions for everyone else. That help and control were the same thing. He didn't stop. He started insulting me. Called me selfish. Called me ungrateful. Said I'd always been difficult, always been someone who created conflict, always been the problem. "You were always so sensitive," he spat. "Always so emotional. You couldn't handle business decisions, so I stepped in. That's all I've ever done." And my father stood up. I'd never seen my father stand up before. Not like this. Not with authority and finality. "That's enough," he said quietly. My brother looked at him, shocked. "What you're describing," my father continued, "isn't helping. It's controlling. And I don't want to be controlled by my own son." My mother nodded slowly. "I agree." My brother looked around the room, searching for an ally, finding none. My father spoke for a long time after that, about how he'd let my brother take control gradually, how he'd been grateful for the help, so he hadn't questioned it, how he should have noticed that gratitude had shifted into obligation. "But I see it now," he said. "And it stops here." My mother added her own words. About feeling managed rather than supported. About realizing that my brother's help came with invisible strings attached. "I want my daughter to have what was promised," she said, looking at me. "And I want my son to understand that we're a family, not a corporation he runs." My brother opened his mouth, closed it, had nothing to say. Because the authority had truly reversed. My parents had reclaimed their power. And he'd lost his. The consequences came quickly. The deed was transferred. Both my name and my brother's were placed on it. Equal standing. His access to my parents' other assets was removed. He could advise but not control. Financial decisions going forward would be made by my parents, with input from both of us. And the investment portfolio remained under my parents' authority alone. My brother would have to ask permission to access or manage anything. He went pale when he heard this, because he'd built an entire identity around being the one in control, the one who made decisions, the one who was competent and essential. And suddenly he was just a son again, equal to his sister. No more special authority. He looked at me across the room, and I saw something in his face I'd never seen before. Fear. He was afraid of what would happen now. Afraid that I'd take control instead of him. Afraid that I'd punish him the way he'd tried to punish me. I didn't do any of those things. My parents offered me reconciliation terms. They wanted the family to move forward. Wanted everyone to forgive and forget. They offered my brother an apology, not because he deserved one, but because they felt guilty for letting it get this far. I appreciate that, I told my parents. But I can't reconcile with someone who doesn't acknowledge what he did. My brother was given the chance to apologize, to explain himself, to offer some kind of genuine recognition of how he'd hurt me. He didn't. Instead, he offered excuses, explanations, justifications. He never said, "I was wrong. Hurt you. I'm sorry." So I declined the reconciliation. Not angrily, just firmly. I can be civil, I told my parents. I can be respectful. But I can't pretend this didn't happen. And I can't be close to someone who still believes he did nothing wrong. They accepted this reluctantly. My brother tried to reach out privately. Tried to convince me that we could work past this. I didn't respond to those attempts. Because I'd learned something crucial. Some bridges burn for a reason. Some relationships are built on foundations of lies. And no amount of fixing the roof changes the fact that the foundation is cracked. Months later, my brother tried one more time. He showed up at my apartment. Unexpected. "We need to talk," he said. I let him in. I was polite. I offered him water. I listened as he tried to explain himself again. And when he was done, I said something that I could see hurt him far more than any argument ever could. "I'm done," I said quietly. Not angry. Not bitter. Just done. He searched my face for something. Anger, maybe, or resentment he could argue against. But I wasn't angry. I was something much worse. I was indifferent. "Tiffany," he started. "I'm not asking you to leave my life dramatically," I continued. "I'll see you at family events. I'll be respectful. But the brother I trusted, the one I believed would always have my back, that person isn't coming back. Because you showed me who you really are, and I can't unknow that." "But I'm still your brother," he said. "You are," I agreed. "But being someone's brother doesn't automatically mean they have to let you stay in their life. Not if you hurt them. Not if you lied to them. Not if you tried to control them." And I stood up. Not aggressively. Just as a signal that the conversation was over. He left slowly. Looking back multiple times like he expected me to change my mind. I didn't. The most painful revenge isn't destruction. It's becoming untouchable. It's refusing to give someone the fight they deserve. It's walking away so completely that they can never drag you back into their chaos. It's moving forward so successfully, so peacefully, so completely, that your happiness becomes the thing that haunts them. Not because you're cruel, but because you're happy without them. And they'll spend years wondering if they could have been happy too, if they just made different choices. That's the hurt that never heals. That's the revenge that lasts forever.